When I was just a lad, I used to think that Super Mario 64 was a funny children's game that was fun for the whole family. But last year, I learned that Super Mario 64 is actually the scariest horror video game in the entire world. Tons of excellent fan projects have taken strides to turn Super Mario 64 into something deeply unsettling and creepy, subverting the otherwise whimsical nature of the game. Of course, some of these were just meme stuff to make Wario apparate or whatever. A lot of them, though, really are very impressive, like B3313, a hack that takes many aesthetic elements of the beta of Super Mario 64 and rearranges them into a twisted, psychological horror trip. When I spoke about it last year, I said it was one of the most bizarre and unsettling pieces of media I have ever engaged with in my life, and I probably compared it to a Stanley Kubrick film. I don't remember for certain because it was such a long time ago, but that sounds exactly like something I would say, so I probably did, and I'm gonna do it again. I have played through far more of this game than I did for my initial video last year. I don't think I quite did it justice, and even this video probably won't do it justice, but I wanted to take another crack at it since the demo for a new version of B3313 was actually released earlier this year. And since it wasn't super long, I thought I'd make this sort of a bonus episode thingy where I revisit the version I played before, and also talk a little bit about this new demo that came out. So it's time to jump back down the rabbit hole of insanity and liminal spaces. Whatever that's supposed to mean. The premise of B3313 is that it's one of many beta versions of the game, supposedly, that was successfully dumped into a ROM file. At least that's how the story goes. There's an entire lore and backstory to the existence of this ROM, so it could be somewhat an example of what you could call multimedia storytelling. The big thing about this game is the modified castle. The level design is absolutely bizarre, hitting you with one gigantic, seemingly empty world and supremely long hallway after another, and every room of the castle has 3 billion different entrances and exits. Objectively, this approach is obnoxious from a gameplay standpoint, but it also lends itself extremely well to the bizarre and unsettling atmosphere. Kinda like how the wonky controls in Resident Evil make it scarier because it puts you in the perspective of a scared idiot against horrors beyond their comprehension. B3313 is very similar in that the level design makes the player feel like a rat in a maze crafted by an evil scientist. The game will mercilessly and repeatedly fuck with your head by hitting you with 18 different versions of the same exact hallway and castle lobby. Sometimes reality will flip on a dime instantaneously. It really is like a Kubrick film where there are so many paths and threads to follow to lend itself well to ludicrous conspiracy theories. I remember taking a certain turn one time and I ended up here in this place that looked like the beta lobby but with the textures of the final game. That was a complete mindfuck when I saw it the first time. And then we see it again with even more different textures. And then you end up in what looks like the regular castle from the base game, almost as if nothing is wrong at all. But then the toads will make references to the sounds of screaming in the distance. There are these frequent moments where it tricks you into thinking that it's just going to be a regular, happy, fun Mario romp now, but immediately juxtaposes that against very off-putting moments. Even when you beat the game, you get the final cutscene where Peach thanks you and promises cake, except she doesn't because her voice is gone. As you keep adventuring through the castle, if you really pay attention, you can slowly start to map out its lunatic, labyrinthine design in your head and make sense of where you are and where you haven't been, except one different turn will take you into an entire other version of the castle that you've never seen before. There's rabbit holes within rabbit holes within rabbit holes, and even when you figure out the layout consistently, the game never escapes that feeling of being in a nightmare that you can't wake up from. And as cheesy as it might sound, and I'm sure it does, the more I played, the more I started to ask myself, could it be permanent? Yeah, I'm starting to sound like a creepypasta protagonist. Maybe I'll change my name to Tom. There is so much bizarre imagery whose significance is only hinted at. Toad statues are everywhere in this game, including one that doesn't have any arms. What's the significance of that? There's an underground prison cell full of all sorts of characters from the game. There's a room with a dead Shadow Mario who becomes huge and kills you on the spot. And if you make the right series of wrong turns, you'll find yourself in a room full of Mario models with no eyes. It is ominous, it is ghoulish, and it is beyond nightmarish and intensely fascinating. There are areas where you know what it's trying to be, but it's not quite there, and like I said about the game's beta in general in the Preservation Project video, it's that uncanny valley effect that allows this otherwise innocent game to be so unsettling in this form. I think the game is supposed to take place in between numerous parallel dimensions and universes and possibly timelines. The characters make frequent references to events and lore, even talking about war in at least one instance. There's a whole thing about how the inhabitants of the universe need the power stars to survive, and by taking them, Mario is dooming them to death. This plot point also appears in the new demo that came out this year. He's also responsible for flooding their homes in Wet Dry World. Somehow or other, a lot of things seem to lead back to Wet Dry World. The music is used regularly, and there are a lot of water levels that otherwise don't have a lot of explanation. There's this ancient city with a yellow haze, which I suppose could be the city that is now part of Wet Dry World, since that's where you end up when you go into the cage in the actual Wet Dry World. Somehow it's prophesized that Mario will flood it and destroy everything and everyone, or at least so I imagine, because somehow this guy knows it's going to happen already. There are so many little details that I missed the first time, and really, that's what makes the game so special, because there are so many details to miss. It really is like a Kubrick film, where there are so many paths and threads to follow to lend itself well to ludicrous conspiracy theories. Did I say that already? Whoa. Speaking of details, I didn't even realize for the longest time that Mario doesn't have a hat for the entirety of the game. So, is this even Mario at all? Or could it be somebody else entirely? But who would it be if not Mario? Pretty much all of this is also true of the new demo as well, just to a smaller, more limited extent, as it is a demo. Even though its form is very limited currently, there is a quality about it that is very unsettling, especially the mansion level. Few things are scarier than being watched, and this game takes that extremely literally by having the eyeballs actually look at you, chase after you, and kill you on the spot. There's even a stealth section where you can sneak behind walls and shit. It really is something else. B3313 has a way of making the player very uncomfortable as the winding, endless branching paths drive them to lunacy, and the perverse musical deviations suggest a sinister force twisting reality in real time. And that, my friends, is what I call art. It has always been my belief that art should make you uncomfortable, because when all is said and done, life itself is uncomfortable, and through art we can find meaning in the discomfort. But that's a video for another day. I'm glad I finally got to take a much more serious crack at B3313. I still have yet to see everything thanks to the sprawling nature of the game, but one day I may revisit it. And perhaps I'll never stop revisiting it, because there's going to be more of it in the future. It's like I said, it could be permanent. Ho ho ho! Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Perhaps this would have been better in October, but hey, they make Christmas-themed horror movies, don't they? I even heard some people say The Shining is a Christmas movie, which means the comparison to Stanley Kubrick makes this perfect for the Christmas marathon, but I digress. I want to warn you all about tomorrow's video. It is not very nice at all. It is very, very naughty, and I would recommend letting the kids play their E-rated video games in the other room while you watch it. I promise it's not H-Doom. Ho ho.